Okay, it is 1 o'clock. Let's go. Recordings in progress. Good afternoon, and welcome to our second Saturday seminar series, which is actually taking place on the third Saturday this month. Because it's been a busy fall, but yeah, here we are. I'm Susan Jones, and Charles D. Fernando is here with me today here at the Animas Museum. Apologies that we had to reschedule this webinar. Like I said, it's been a busy fall, but Charlie did this talk for a convention of tourist railroads that the Durango and Silverton hosted early in September. And we figured it was a topic that a lot of people would be interested in, talking about the street railway, also known as the streetcar or the trolley that ran here. There's a lot of misinformation about the streetcar about there, and Charlie has really kind of discovered some of the answers, although maybe some of them are still to be discovered. But for those of you on Zoom, some quick housekeeping. We're using webinar feature, which means you're all muted and your videos are off. At the bottom of your screen, and you may need to mouse down a little bit, there are some icons. We have disabled the chat function today, so please use the Q&A. If you have an immediate issue, click on the Q&A and we'll be monitoring that. But otherwise, hold your questions till the end, please. Also, for those on Zoom, we're supporting closed captioning, but you need to turn it on if you want to do it. To do so, you just navigate down to those icons at the bottom of your screen and click on Captions and enable Show Captions, and it'll turn green if it's enabled. So again, please hold all your questions to the end of the talk. If you're on Zoom, you can go ahead and type them into the Q&A at any time, but we won't get to them until the very end. Now, what we're going to do is we'll take questions off of Zoom first, and we'll repeat the questions so everybody here can hear them. And then we'll open it up to the classroom, so you guys can ask questions as well. This session is being recorded, and for those of you who registered on Zoom, you'll get an email within 24 hours with the recording link, and otherwise, you can visit our website later today at animasmuseum.org and go to the events page, and you can watch the recording. You ready? Let's go.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everybody out there in Cyberland. I found this topic very interesting. I've always been fascinated by the streetcar system in Durango. It was one of the smallest in Colorado. They had much grander plans, which never materialized. But it's amazing how this system developed and the major things that they accomplished, in a short amount of time. As early as 1883, there was a streetcar company incorporated for Durango. On February the 13th, 1883, incorporation papers were filed in Denver with the state offices, and they had a capital stock of $25,000. Nothing ever happened, and nobody seems to know what happened to the $25,000. But anyway, we go a little further down the road, and in August of 1890, we have two gentlemen who start another company. And these two gentlemen, there was a man named Schiffer and a man named Pruitt. They were made managers, and the Rocky Mountain News from Denver of August 29th, 1890 announced that they already had steel on the ground and they were waiting for cars. Now, this original system was a horse-drawn system, and they were going to be operating on a mile of track. And they were announcing that they would commence operations by October the 15th of 1890. Well, that didn't quite happen. The two original horse-drawn cars that they used were actually purchased from the streetcar line in Pueblo, Colorado. And they were originally number 5 and number 8 on the Pueblo line. And when they were sold to the company in Durango here, they were relettered, repainted, and relettered number 1 and number 2 with Durango Street Railway. And these were, again, horse-drawn cars that were narrow gauge. So in this title picture here, that's later, and that's a standard gauge electric trolley, and we'll get to that. So here is one of the few pictures that we have of one of those original horse-drawn trolleys in Durango, and this is the lower end of Main Street, right in front of the Strater Hotel. You can see the smoke belching out of the smelter stacks, at the base of Smelter Mountain there. And of course, that's a very small car. And again, they were horse-drawn. And the mile of track started at the train depot, right in front of the train depot. The tracks were laid right up the center of Main Avenue to the Animas River, just past 15th Street. And at the time, the bridge across the Animas River was still a wooden structure and was not suitable for a trolley car to pass over. So that's why the line ended right there at the river. Now here's an overview of Durango taken from up on top of Smelter Mountain, looking down on the town. Over there towards the left, you can see Main Avenue, you can see the depot, and if you look really closely, and it's hard to see, but there is a horse-drawn trolley headed up Main Street, headed north there, and we can date this from the horse-drawn days because there's no power poles. Once the electric streetcar line is put in, you have power poles that suspend an overhead wire for the pickup for the electric motors, and they don't exist in this photograph. But again, that's a great picture of early Durango. You can see parts of the smelter down here at the lower edge, and you can see the ore sampling works right over here, and so forth. So anyway, and up where the college is today there, that's where the city reservoir was located for the water system. So again, February the 6th, 1891, new incorporation articles were filed for the Durango Street Railway with an initial capital stock of $50,000. Managers were Charles M. Williams, Joe Pruitt, and Henry Schiffer. The horse-drawn system didn't last very long, and some people attribute it to poor service. The trolley would leave the depot before people were unloaded off the train. So we don't know why they were, anyway, but people complained bitterly about the poor service on the horse-drawn cars. So again, those initial filings were February the 6th, 1891. In April of 1891, they had to file new incorporation papers to dissolve the Durango Street Railway Corporation because the state Secretary of State had discovered that first incorporation back in 1883, and it was under the same name. And so the Secretary of State said, you got to come up with a new corporation name. You can't have two corporations because the other one had never been dissolved. So new filings to dissolve the Durango Street Railway Corporation were filed due to the pre-existing corporation. The new name was given as Durango City and Suburban Railway Company, with a capital stock of $50,000 that sold for $100 a share. And again, the incorporators were Harry Schiffer, Joseph Pruitt of La Plata County, and Charles M. Williams of El Paso County. That's Colorado Springs. So we jump ahead to July of 1882, and articles of incorporation are filed for a new company, the Durango Railway and Realty Company, with a capital stock of $250,000. Incorporators were George Ditchfield, S.E. Herr, W.G. White, W.S. Pickerel, and M.J. McCloskey. And so Durango Railway and Realty buys out the horse-drawn system. And again, with a capitalization of $250,000, they've got enough money now to build an electric system. So construction begins, and the most probably significant change they make is they decide to build in standard gauge. Here's another picture of one of the horse-drawn cars, and this again is 1891, and this is in the 1100 block of Main Avenue. There's Perrins Peak in the background there, and it's in front of the Chapman hardware business. But anyway, these horse-drawn cars, again, I'm not sure how they, if they got to the end of the line, if they unhitched the horse and just moved him around to the other end of the car, because they did not have a turntable. So they would have had to switch the hitching on the horse to reverse those cars. So again, the two earliest of those cars came from Pueblo, and were probably originally manufactured in Denver. There were several car builders in Denver who built railroad cars initially, and then they branched out into street cars, etc. So as early as 1896, the company is quibbling with the local tax assessor over evaluations and taxation. And so what they could do is protest to the State Board of Equalization. So in 1896, they took their complaints to the State Board of Equalization to appeal what the local assessor had charged them, and they got a significant reduction in their taxes. It says the Equalization Board assessment was $500 a mile and $500 per mile for equipment, for a total of $2,000. The local assessor had assessed them for $7,000. So they got a very significant reduction in their taxes that year. So again, 1896, they have 2 miles of track, and they list as having 5 acres of land. So anyway, here's one of the early electric cars from that time period. This is in front of what was the Burns National Bank building right at 9th and Main Avenue, and it's looking north. And that's one of the early electric cars. The early cars were small. They were what they called one-truck cars. They only had 4 wheels under them with 1 wheel structure. And so you couldn't have a very big car. Later on, they buy new equipment that has their larger cars that are 2-truck. And again, this is standard gauge. We're in the electric operations by this point. And you can see holes there. It's not real obvious. There were wires that ran overhead that suspended a central line that fed power to the actual motors of the trolley. So anyway, we jump ahead to January of 1905, and there's a notice in the Semi-Weekly Herald that all of the streetcars are draped in mourning for C.M. Williams, the founder of Durango's street railway system. So again, he was involved in the very early days. He was from Colorado Springs, and so they put black bunting on all of the cars to honor him on his death. Um, so this is a great postcard image of Durango. These color postcards were produced from photographic images and then were printed. But again, this is Main Street looking south down towards the depot and the smelter. The big building over here on this side is the Central Hotel. What's different today, it does not have that tower on the corner. That has been removed in later years. But all of these postcard images really like to show the streetcar, or the tracks at least, so that people know that Durango is a really up and coming town and has modern conveniences like an electric streetcar line. So when the street railway switches over to larger two-truck cars, they published a notice in the paper that it says the street railway is now operating modern double truck cars. And we are trying to maintain a 15-minute schedule, but we may have to change to a 20-minute schedule because of new equipment, because people weren't following the rules on how to board and deboard from these new bigger cars. And that slowed down operations. And again, the two-truck cars, they were operating two cars at a time from opposite directions. And I'll get into where they would meet up, and they had a crossing or a passing track. But again, just like the trolley system we have today, they work on a 20-minute schedule. Every 20 minutes, they're at a different stop. But anyway, so I don't know if the modern system figured out that's what they used to do and that's what we're going to do today or what, but it's funny that they're still operating on a 20-minute system. So in 1906, there was a big group of Denver boosters that traveled the state of Colorado trying to promote the Buy Colorado. You've heard that term, Buy Colorado. And they went to towns all over Colorado to promote this so that money would be kept in Colorado. And whenever these big tour groups showed up, the town would turn out and entertain them, and they gave them passes to ride the streetcar. They gave them tours of all the industry, local industry and everything, and this was to promote local business to the broader state. So anyway, the Denver boosters visited Durango. They rode the trolleys, and they were very impressed on the system in such a small town, because by that time, Denver and Colorado Springs and Pueblo had huge trolley systems. So we jump ahead 1906. They have to announce their annual meetings to elect new board or continue their board of operation, etc. The Board of Trade was always publishing material to promote this area to new people. And they would send out these brochures all over the country to try to attract new residents to the area. And in the 1911 publication of the Board of Trade, there's an article about the electric streetcar and how modern a town Durango is, and it would be a pleasure to live here. And they're also touting that we can have an electric streetcar because we have Tacoma Power Plant, which is a hydroelectric plant upriver on the Animas, which not only provides sufficient power for the street railway, but for business and industry and everybody in town. So all of these kind of brochures and stuff are always very interesting to read and how they promoted Durango. So again, this is down at 9th and Main, and the car pictured there is an open summer car, and that's one of the first electric cars that was used, and it's a single truck car. And the way you can tell the difference between a double truck car and a single truck car is the single truck car only has one connection to the wire overhead. The double truck cars have two of those, but one is only used at a time. So again, when you got to the end of the line to turn those cars, the operator had a rope on that mechanism that was spring loaded, and he could pull it down and walk around the car and reverse the direction of that arm. And then he just moved to the other end of the car. There was an operator's position at both ends of the car, and then you just went the other direction. So, but again, that's a great picture of the saloon block. All those buildings over there on the west side of Main Street at that time, most of them were saloons, and that was considered the saloon block in Durango before Prohibition sets in. So again, and this car is what we call a summer car. It's an open car. You sure wouldn't want to ride that in the winter, and they did not operate them in the winter months. So on August the 8th of 1912, they again had an announcement for their annual meeting, and they're trying to determine whether they're going to extend the life of the corporation for another 20 years. They had initially incorporated for 20 years. That time was up, and at that meeting, they decided to continue the corporation for another 20 years. Again, this is a great picture. This shows one of the double truck cars heading over the Main Avenue Bridge. It's obviously wintertime. You can see snow there, and it's very obvious. You can see the poles that suspend the wires, and you can see the connecting mechanism from the car to the overhead wire. And one is up touching the wire. The other one at the back of the car is tied down. Another image there at the Main Avenue Bridge. This is a postcard, another one of those postcard images. This shows some of the houses on West Park Avenue, and it shows the mountains in the background. I'm sure this was a very popular postcard for tourists. Again, it showed some of the scenic beauty of the town. It looks a little hokey to us because of the printing quality, and again, these were the images were engraved from photographic material, and then they had to be printed and the color added to it. So it's not the most accurate, but it's still a very interesting view. Back in 1892, the Newman Building, which is pictured here, was built. The Newman Building, and this is a promotional brochure, when they were getting ready to build that building, it was a major construction in Durango in 1892. And again, it's an artist's rendering, and they make the building look huge compared to the people down on the street, but you can see it shows a trolley there in front of the building. Here's the building, a real picture of the building, again with a summer car right there in the intersection of 8th and Main in front of the Newman Building. And again, the perspective's a little different, and the proportions are a little bit different. Um, so anyway, by 1918, they're having financial trouble. Um, and here's another great view of downtown. You can see the Newman building over there to the left. And again, whoever took this picture was probably on the roof of the Strater Hotel looking north up Main Street. It's a great picture because it shows a lot of new construction that was done in the 1890s or towards the turn of the century. Of course, the Newman Building's 1892. You can see the tower of the county courthouse, which doesn't exist anymore. It's towering over everything. And there's the Masonic building, which at that time was the Redmond Opera House, and some other structures there that are not there anymore. Um, the Redmond Opera House is there. It's on 8th or 9th Street, east of Main Avenue. So anyway, in 1918, they proposed to raise the rate. It was 5 cents was what it cost to ride the trolley. And they proposed to raise it from 5 cents to 6 cents. They had to go through the State Utilities Commission to do that. But then they figure out if we raise it to 6 cents, we have to hire a second person to be on the trolley to make change. And that would take up more than the raise in rates. So that never happened. I mean, they were given permission to do it, but they very quickly decided, no, it's going to cost us more to pay another salary than we're going to make. And again, the trolley system struggled because, again, soon after it was initially built, we get into the silver crash of 1893. And so the silver crash, again, was caused by Congress changing the monetary standard from silver to gold. And that really shut down Colorado because all of Colorado's economy was based on silver production because the law required that the government had to buy so many ounces of silver monthly. And when that ended, the price of silver crashed and everything shut down. There was a domino effect, and that financial collapse spread worldwide eventually. And so Durango was sort of able to weather it. I mean, they suffered, but Durango was still a business hub and a transportation hub for the whole region. And it was also the county seat. So Durango survived the silver crash much better than other parts of Colorado and some of the surrounding mining towns, which totally disappeared at that point. Um, you might wonder where did they keep the trolleys? Well, we don't have too many pictures of the trolley barn, but this is one picture, and the young lady standing in front there is Irma Campbell, and she lived right across the street on 14th Street from the trolley barn, and obviously her mom was taking a picture of her to show off her new dress, but behind her is the trolley barn. And it was right off of Main Street, just beyond where the railroad tracks cross Main Avenue on 14th Street. So it was actually in the 1400 block of Main, and it backed all the way up to the railroad right-of-way that is heading towards the 15th Street Bridge. And the hill over here on the other side, of course, is the College Mesa. The hill or the mountain ridge in the back is Missionary Ridge. So this is looking northeast from 14th Street. And here's another view of the trolley barn. Again, these are a couple of the Campbell kids and another probably neighbor kid there that the dog was harassing. You can't see her face, but anyway, you can see on this one the top of Animas City Mountain over to the left there, and over here to the right is Missionary Ridge. So the trolley was extended north up the middle of Main Street, up into beyond the city limits of Durango, to a new area that was developed by the streetcar company called Brookside. That was the development that straddled Junction Creek, and that included the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds was instituted by Durango Railway and Realty. It was owned by them and developed by them. It was developed as an attraction so they could have events, big events, that would entice people to ride the streetcar and try to build up revenue and ridership. So what is today the county fairgrounds was originally Durango Railway and Realty's fairgrounds. And they built a large racetrack there. Horse racing, sulky racing was a big thing in the early days in Durango and Animas City's existence. And you could have other events at the fairgrounds like fairs. And every year they had a large agricultural fair in the fall that invited people from all over the four corners to exhibit their agricultural produce. And they would have animal judging competitions. They would have horse racing. They would bring in different entertainment, again, to attract people. They had balloons, actually hot air balloons. And then when airplanes came along, they brought in airplanes. Some of the first airplanes that were flown in this area were flown out of the fairgrounds. So this is right at the entrance to the fairgrounds. You can see the grandstands, that light-colored building over to the left, and right here in front of us is would be like an exhibit building, and right in front of that you can see the trolley tracks, and you can see they're look pretty rough. There's not a whole lot of ballasting, and later on there's a lot of complaints about how bad the track was, and riding one of those open summer cars, they said, was like riding a bucking bronco. And they wanted seat belts, but they didn't get them. Here's another picture of one of those summer single truck cars. And again, you can see that overhead mechanism that picks up electricity from the overhead wire. And again, this is right near the fairgrounds. The car is obviously loaded. Those are students from Fort Lewis boarding school, and they're probably attending that agricultural fair in the fall at some point. So some of these earlier single truck cars, they converted into maintenance cars, and they had one, of course, that was a snow plow. And it was only used for that in the winter. But later we'll see some pictures of how snow really limited operation of the trolley. So this is Animas City in 1897. And this picture is a famous picture because it was taken by Whitman Cross. It was part of the U.S. Geological Survey of this area done in 1897. And it's taken from the hill behind us here, looking over Animas City to the east. And it's looking right down on what is today 32nd Street and the bridge over the Animas. And you can see everything over there on the east side of the river is very undeveloped. And the major thing you see is there's no urban forest. And this is what the whole valley looked like before irrigation. The only trees you see are along the water course. People want to know, well, did they cut all the trees down? No, there were no trees there to begin with. And the urban forest that we have today is because we have irrigation, diversion of water from the river and other sources. So again, this was taken by the U.S. Geological Survey to show the glacial moraines and the geology of the hills to the east of us. But if you look, it's really hard to see, but this would be Main Street down here. And if you look closely at that, the trolley tracks are right up the center. They're unballasted, and it's hard to see, but over at 32nd Street, there's a building sort of blocking, but when you look at it with a magnifying glass, the trolley car is there waiting to head back down to Durango. So there's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a number of books written about trolley systems in Colorado. And unfortunately, the parts about Durango are very lacking and have lots of mistakes. And so when you read those books, you have to sort of take them with a grain of salt. One of the things that happened with the streetcar line once they arrived in Animas City was at some point the streetcar company again wanted to develop attractions to get people to ride the trolley. So they actually established a park, an amusement park in Animas City by the river, and they had rowboats that you could rent. They featured ice skating in the winter when the river froze over. Have you ever seen the river freeze over to ice skate on? But anyway, it did in the early days. And they also had a bandstand there. They featured bands and different amusements. But we don't know where that park was. And it's a big thing. We've had a lot of research done, and Animas City had a park, but it's another, it's quite a few blocks north of 32nd. And again, we're trying to zero in on exactly where this park operated by the streetcar company was located. Some people think it's just across 32nd Street there, across the bridge. Others think it's further upriver. The slow part of the river is from 32nd Street north. So anywhere you had rowboats, it had to be in that area, but we still haven't zeroed in on exactly where that trolley park was. So anyway, and again, this is a map that was published in a more recent history of streetcar systems in Colorado. This is a publication that anybody can access online. It was a report done by Colorado Department of Transportation in 2020. And it was released in September of 2020. It's called Historic Streetcar Systems of Colorado. And this is fascinating because it covers every streetcar system in Colorado. But there's some conflicting information in this report that doesn't line up with stuff I've found in newspapers and other publications. But in their map, they show the streetcar line being extended north from 32nd Street. And if that actually happened, and I did find in an annual report that they were given permission to lay more track north of 32nd Street. And if that actually happened, then what we call Animas City Park is probably where the trolley park was. which is up further up Main Street. But we haven't been able to truly um, verify that or not. But that's, and again, on this map, it's sort of a yellow color down here at the bottom. That indicates the original horse line just going to the river. And then once the system was electrified, it went again all the way to Animas City. Again, here's just another close-up of one of those open summer cars. And again, the operator is in the process of moving the, I should have looked up the name of that. I think it's called a gantry. A what? A trolley pole? Okay. He's changing the position of the trolley pole so he can reverse the car. He's at the end of the line in Animas City and getting ready to head south. The cars were all lettered Durango, Brookside, and Animas City. And then each car had an individual number and so forth. So that's again one of the single truck cars. And again, this is just to illustrate how bad the track was. There's hardly any ballast there. And again, Main Street was just a dirt street. And you can imagine how horrible trying to get over that would have been if you had a wagon or whatever. It was sort of an impediment to travel. And anyway, that house was in Animas City. It doesn't, I don't believe it exists anymore, but it was near the end of the line. But I just put this in to show the condition of the track there. And after one of the annual meetings, the stockholders finally decided to chip in to help buy new ties and do repair work because the roadbed and the track conditions were getting so bad. So what they voted to was to assess every share of stock $5 to make improvements because they had no income. So that's pretty bad when you start assessing your stockholders to do repair work. So here we get into winter. And it's amazing that they could keep those things running in the winter. Again, they outfitted one of the older cars with a snowplow. This is down in the 500 block looking north. Over there to the left is the Strater Hotel. What's different today, the Strater does not have that tower on the corner anymore, but this is basically at the intersection of Main and 6th or Main and College today, and looking north towards Animas City Mountain. So if you had a bad winter, snow was a huge issue. And here's another view. This is looking down 8th Street to 8th and Main. And again, the trolley's there in front of the Newman building. And just huge amounts of snow. And again, if the snow was too deep to plow, you had to bring in hand labor with shovels to hand shovel it. This is a little further up Main Street. And again, you can just see what an obstacle that snow would have been to everybody. This is at 12th and Main, looking north again. And look at that pile of snow, the guy standing up there. I mean, that's just amazing. And somebody had to shovel that all up into that pile. So they got their exercise. Again, similar picture, just a little bit different angle, same guys up there. Now this is where the trolley tracks intersected the Silverton branch of the railroad at 14th and Main. And so you've got the standard gauge trolley tracks coming up, and they're crossing the narrow gauge track there at 14th Street. So it makes the narrow gauge really look tiny just because of the angle of the photograph. But again, that intersection had to be kept clean. So both operations wouldn't hang up there. And again, you can see the large poles all along there. There were smaller poles on each side that suspended cross wires that suspended the main wire that ran over the tracks. And this is the passing track. When you got across the bridge near 17th Street, this is where the passing track was. So again, they were operating a car from both ends of the line. When they got to this point, one of them passed the other and continued to the other end of the line. And again, here's a winter picture up at Animas City. This is the end of the line. And again, that's a closed car. And again, they were heated. They had electric heaters, of course. So this is an interesting view. This is the Animas River south of the Main Avenue Bridge. And it's really hard to tell, but the trolley is coming from the north, approaching the bridge. They're getting ready to cross. And the river looks very calm there and so forth. Well, the river isn't always so calm, as we can have learned in the last few days. This was the result of the 1911 flood. The Animas River in 1911 reached a peak flow of 25,000 CFS flow. This past week, the high point was 5,000 and some cubic feet. So if you can imagine 20,000 more cubic feet of water coming down, debris washed into the Main Avenue Bridge, created a dam. Water took the easiest route over. It came over Main Avenue on the south end of the bridge and washed out the tracks. You can see a car uphill there approaching the bridge. They can't get beyond this point because the tracks are damaged. They're trying to, you can see the wooden sidewalks are all washed out and undercut, etc. The 1911 flood was a regional flood. It shut down the smelter in Durango for 6 months, which was a huge economic blow to Durango. They had to do major rebuilding at the smelter because of damage. This again shows the trolley after it's over Main. You can see all the debris there that was brought up from the river over Main Street. Again, they were working as quickly as possible to get things operating again. Another picture in that same vicinity near 15th Street. This is a little sooner after the flood. There's still standing water, etc. All of the suspension poles for the trolley lines were painted white. So in some of these pictures, you see all these white poles. That's all part of the overhead wire system for the trolley. Again, another picture of flood damage right there at 15th and Main. Lots of damage. This is Junction Creek in Main Avenue. And Junction Creek totally took out the bridge at that point. This is just north of 22nd Street. Today, when you drive down Main Street, most people don't even know you're crossing over Junction Creek, but there is a bridge there, but you just don't notice it today. But of course, with the bridge washed out, the trolley, that was the end of the line for the trolley. That car is on the south side of Junction Creek, and it's looking towards Durango. It's hard to tell in there, but there's a tower sticking up, which was the north side hose house of the fire department, which was located at 20th and Main. That building does not exist anymore, but it had a tall tower, um, a bell tower, and again, it doesn't exist anymore. But there were houses on either side of Junction Creek there. The creek undercut the foundations of both of them, but they were able to save the houses. And then after the flood, they channelized the creek there at that point and put in concrete retaining walls, which are still there. They've survived later floods, but we have never had a flood as bad as 1911. It hasn't happened yet, but 1971 came close, but not that bad. So this is an interesting thing that I found in the Durango paper, and it was an ad published by the First National Bank of Durango, and let me just read it to you because you probably can't read it. But this was published in the 1970s, and it says, the first investors in Durango didn't always strike it rich. If you had $100 you weren't using in 1892, you could have bought a share in the Durango Suburban Street Railway, a mule-powered streetcar operating on Main Avenue between the railroad depot and the Animas River. If you had invested your $100 in that venture, you'd have been $100 poorer. Not every business in Durango has been successful, but there are still businesses operating here which were started long before the Durango Suburban Street Railway, and the bank they depended upon in the early days is still making life better here today. Well, of course, the First National Bank has been bought by TBK and doesn't exist anymore. But I just thought that was a great little ad that even they were thinking about investment and how people didn't always make good investments. So anyway, that's the end of, we'll pop back to that picture. I love that picture. It just shows how busy and what a business center Durango was in the early days. And can you imagine dirt streets and horse manure and a bad rainstorm? That must have made a powerful smell. So anyway, do we have any questions from online?
Any questions online? Go ahead and type them into the Q&A and we'll get them to Charlie.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Do any of you have a question or clarification? Yes.
So when did stop?
1920. They want to know when the railroad shut down or the street railway. They were given permission to abandon in 1920. Yes.
Look at the rail car and that top piece, is that a aesthetically pleasing? What's the function of the design of the car?
Oh, you mean the roof?
Yeah, and you had another slide that kind of showed that.
Well, the roof structure is just like the narrow gauge railroad cars. That's called a clear story, that upper part, and it had ventilating windows. So in hot weather, you could open those windows and vent hot air out of the car. Or you could get airflow. So when you open the windows, you get natural convection that would take smoky or nasty air out of the top of the car. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
In Fort Collins, they had a massive trolley system that went all the way around town. And they still have about 5-6 blocks that are still running, but at any rate, every time, at least as of 10 years ago, every time they do street work, all of a sudden they dig up the rails. The rails are still under, this much pavement. My question is, here on Main Avenue, if you dig deep enough,
No.
Are they still there?
Mm-mm. In 1920, when they ceased operations, again, this was driven because of lack of money. The stockholders, the last 5 years subsidized it, and even employees donated part of their salaries to keep the thing running. And so in 1920, a scrapper from Denver purchased the whole system. And he came down and everything was pulled at that time and sent on the train up to Denver. So, and even I came across a newspaper article when they were loading the cars. And of course, the trolley barn was at 14th Street. They had to get them down to, it's either, I think it was 8th and Main. And at that point, they jacked them up and pulled the standard gauge trucks out from under them and then put, they took wagon wheels, big wooden axles with wagon wheels, and replaced under the cars. And then they got teams of horses to pull them off the track over to the railroad track at, at 8th and just, west of Main Avenue there, where they loaded those cars. They used horses to pull them up on narrow gauge flat cars so they could take them to Denver.
Does any of those survive?
Not that I know of. And again, the track was all pulled up. And soon after that, the reason they pulled it up, again, it had value, but Durango was pushing to pave Main Street. And they did not want anything to impede the paving process. So along with pulling out the tracks, they regraded Main, and within a couple of years, Main Avenue was paved. And that was the first paving project in Durango.
And that was a question we had online. Did removing tracks delay paving Main until?
It didn't delay
did.
because, again, the paving doesn't happen until about 1923, if I remember right. But anyway, but again, the last few years of operation of the trolley, they were running at a deficit. And again, they kept petitioning the Public Utilities Commission for permission to abandon, but they were denied because it was considered a necessity to move people from Animas City to Durango and to work at the railroad and the smelter and so forth. What they didn't take into consideration is economic conditions were so bad, people couldn't afford the nickel to ride. And then they said, well, raise your rate to 7 cents. Well, again, they batted this around. Well, if we raise it to 7 cents, we got to hire a second person to be on the car to make change because you couldn't just take a nickel. And children always got a discount. If you were a school child and you depended on the trolley to get to school, you got half price fare. So either they made them pay exact change or they made change for them because they got to ride for 3 cents. It wasn't exactly half. But anyway, finally by 1920, the board of directors just gave up and said, we're not going to subsidize this anymore. And they started looking for a buyer and scrapped it out. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did they stop every block, every 2 blocks?
I'm not sure. It was asked what the schedule was. Where were the stops along the route? They ran on a 20-minute schedule, but again, I think it's probably very similar to what the modern transit system uses today. It wasn't every block, and they probably had a signal on the car where you could, pull a bell or cord, and they would stop to let you off where you wanted. But then they'd had scheduled stops too. But I've never seen an actual schedule that shows where stops were. Yeah. Anybody else have a question or comment or? anything? I think we're about out of time, or I probably went way over. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Just our final little bit of shameless self-promotion. Yeah, the museum is open to the public on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 10 to 4, and Wednesday and Friday from 1 to 4. And History Colorado's traveling exhibit called Ute Knowledge, Colorado's original science, technology, engineering, and math is open next door. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really it's fascinating and it's a lot of fun, a lot of hands-on activities. The exhibit will be here until mid-December. So if you haven't checked it out, come by, bring your family over the holidays, and it's a great little exhibit. We're really pleased that LPEA helped us to bring to Durango. Now, our next big webinar, which we're really excited about, is called The Portrait of Colorado at 150, the Storytelling Initiative. And that's going to be held on Saturday, November 1st from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Now, Dr. Kim Kennedy White, who's the John W. Emery Family Associate Curator of Oral Histories at History Colorado, is going to be joining us to talk about this initiative and then also walk through the basics of oral history collection, because we need to crowdsource this. We've got a lot of great stories out there and we don't have enough resources to collect them all. So we want to teach you and enable you to do that. So this is going to be either on Zoom or you can come watch at the Animas Museum. There's no charge for the webinar and it will be recorded, and we're really excited about it because this is part of our Sesquicentennial Quincentennial celebration, which we started back in February of 2024 with the 150th anniversary of La Plata County's founding. And we're also excited along those same lines is this is the second venue where we're offering this wonderful commemorative magazine that was put together by our region's America 250 Colorado 150s organization. And it's gorgeous. We've got some up here if you want to grab one. And we've got, we're a proud in-kind sponsor and we're glad to help with this. And we're really excited about it. Look for a lot more programming next year, starting in January, because January, it's also the 150th anniversary of Animas City. So we're going to have a talk. Don't have all the details firmed up yet, but we'll have the same kind of thing with reprising Robert McDaniel's talk that he did last week at the Genealogy Society, where he looked at what really happened. There's all kinds of stories and rumors about Animas City and Durango and who came first and what happened, and he kind of sheds light on that whole thing. So stay tuned for that. To keep up with us, join us. Members only get access to our online catalog database, and you can sign up on our website, or we have some forms out in the lobby. Visit our website, animasmuseum.org. There's a lot more resources there. Subscribe to our e-blast. Follow us on Facebook. Like us on Instagram. And if you want to see continued programming like this, be sure to hit the donate button or drop some money in the donation jars outside. As of that, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for coming. Leave that open.